Good evening and welcome to the April 11th, 2019 Police Oversight Board meeting. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The mission statement for the Police Oversight Board is advancing constitutional policing and accountability for APD in the Albuquerque community. Can I have an approval of the agenda, please?
I make a motion that we approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any public comment this evening? No public comment. Can I have a motion to approve the March 14th minutes?
I move we approve the March 14th minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Reports from city staff. APD?
Good evening, Chair Galloway and members of the board. I'm Commander Velarde with the Internal Affairs Professional Standards Division. During the month of March, looks like that we had an increase in calls from February by 3,653. Internal Affairs cases for the month of March, we didn't have any closed during the month and 0 at the Area Command investigative level. We didn't have any mediated. We did have 11 letters of reprimand for vehicle crashes, 6 verbal reprimands for vehicle crashes, which entailed suspensions of 8 hours, 10 hours, 8 hours, and 16 hours. We had 18 alerts referenced at EIS. We have 32 pending internal affairs investigations, and 11 cases were opened during the month.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Next is City Council.
Chairwoman Galloway, board members, as I'm sure you're aware, the City Council approved the amendments to the Police Oversight Ordinance. I know some of you may want to see the final enacted legislation, and our legislative staff has been enrolling and engrossing all the amendments to the bill, and a full enacted version should be posted on our Legistar website by the end of the day tomorrow. So that could give you kind of the sense of all the changes that were made in the final form of the bill. Again, I'd like to just thank the board, Mr. Harness, and the CPOA staff for all the hard work and to get the legislation approved. I know it was a long and at times frustrating process, but we appreciate everyone's time, effort, and commitment to the process. With that, for the vacancies on the board, we have 3 names for consideration. I'll be sending the names and contact information to Ms. Fine for the Outreach Committee, Subcommittee, to her tomorrow. I was trying to get it done today, but just kind of ran out of time before the meeting today. So that subcommittee can schedule the meetings with the potential nominees. And once those meetings occur and we're good to go, then we'll introduce those appointments to the full council. And with that, I stand for any questions.
No, I don't have any.
Do we have also 5, I know the last time we went through this, we had 5 kind of in the wings, waiting in the wings candidates. Do we have that as well this time?
Chairwoman Galloway, yeah, I think one of the names was actually from that 5. But I do think actually the last time we sent actually 6 names.
Okay.
So we should still have 5, but I'll go back in my notes and make sure we still have 5 to send in that same email to Ms. Fine.
And the 3 candidates that you guys have ready, are they the same individuals that we met with after the last go-round, or do we have some new faces?
Chairwoman Galloway, there is 1 held over from the original 3 that we had, and then 2 new folks.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody from the mayor's office?
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. I am not from the mayor's office, but I am speaking on behalf of the administration tonight. As the board knows, Mr. Lewis has retired from his position and he regularly gives these updates. So I am here as a designee tonight to provide an update, and it is very, very brief. And so what as the board is aware, the city is currently in the middle of the budget process. And so what we wanted to highlight, what the administration wanted to highlight, is that the effort in adding resources or ensuring that the compliance efforts with the CASA are fully met and fully funded. There's several new supervisory positions that have been created, which will provide optimal staffing levels and ratios. There's a couple of other with some the ECW devices. So there's a lot of efforts that are going into making sure that the process is funded and successful for the upcoming fiscal year. So other than that, like I said, very limited. So I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, or to bring any questions to the administration and respond to the board.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Y'all have a nice evening.
You as well. Anybody from city attorney? Hi, Jeremy.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. I'll be equally brief. We have the draft independent monitor's 9th report that's being reviewed and considered by the parties for comment. Those comments are due on the 16th, so we'll get those back to Dr. Junger in due order. And the use of force training was delivered to the independent monitor and the parties at the beginning of this month, as was anticipated by the order entered by the court some time ago. We're going to have comments due back on that training from the monitor and the parties by the middle of this month, by the 15th. So those things are ticking along as anticipated, and then the 9th report will be filed with the court on May the 2nd.
Okay.
That's all I have unless you have questions.
I understand that we are not being given a copy of the draft
Right.
for some issues that we have going on ourselves. But can we review that as well? I believe Director Harness probably has, but can we, if we wanted to,
Sure, if
come
you want
down?
to set up a date and time to come by City Legal, we certainly can make the same accommodation.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have any questions?
I will put my city attorney hat on now, Madam Chair. But just to add onto the report that my colleague has given, I want to report to the board that tonight will be Mr. Schmiel's last police oversight meeting. So he is retiring from our office and is moving on to a big, exciting new path in his life. And so we are very thrilled that he's doing this. Obviously, it's a huge loss for us and for our office. He's been a tremendous asset and resource, not just for me stepping into this job sort of blind and helping with the compliance efforts, but also with the department. I mean, he has been a pivotal piece of our compliance efforts. He's been a cornerstone and a rock and sort of the foundation that we have been able to build off of. So we're incredibly sad to see him go, but very, very proud of the work that he has done and the professional that he's become. And so want to wish him the best of luck moving forward, and just wanted to report that. I had a feeling he was going to sort of leave that out. But
Well, Jeremy, we certainly echoed that as well. You've been a wonderful resource for us and have made yourself available. So sad to see you go, but congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All righty.
I would like to say the same thing. I think everyone has said how important you have been for us and with us, and I just want to say I appreciate what you do, or what you did do.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. And
Sure.
it was a really difficult decision for me to make, and I'll be watching I'll be watching and hoping and praying, and I have a lot of faith in the people involved in this process. I know it's the right thing. It's abundantly important for the city, and I have a lot of hope moving forward for everything, so.
Do you know who will be replacing you as our
Sure.
contact point?
So Lindsay Van Meter will be stepping into the role I served, and the city attorney's office will be filling another role that will be addressing the compliance needs in the near future.
Okay, thanks.
I'd like to say thank you, too. I enjoyed working with you, and are you staying in Albuquerque?
Oh, yes, I am. My wife won't let me leave, so. I'm just joking.
Thanks.
Yep, of course.
Thank you.
And I want to also just say thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
CPCs. Do we have any of our CPC members here tonight?
Good afternoon. I forgot who's the chairperson now.
That'd be me.
All right, Chairperson Galloway, and members of the POB. Dorothy Woodward from the Northeast CPC. When I was here the last time, I announced that on May 4th, all 6 area CPCs are coming together to examine where we are now, look at our strengths, what are our opportunities and aspirations as we fulfill our goals, and also to help prepare for the viability of what is now being proposed as an ordinance for the CPCs to continue in perpetuity after full compliance, etc. Any questions, please? And yes, you are invited. It is on a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. We hope that you will be there and you will share with us.
And where will this be?
It will be at the Training Academy
Training Academy.
on 4th and Montano.
Anybody have any questions? Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris?
Good evening, Chair Galloway and board members. Chris Sylvan, Community Outreach Manager with the Albuquerque Police Department. I will echo what Dorothy from the Northeast CPC just said. Yes, we are having a strategic planning session at the Albuquerque Police Academy May the 4th, and you're all invited to see the future of where the CPCs are going. As far as CPC things go, last night at the Southwest CPC, I think that they're moving to move their meetings to the Pat Baca Library, so we will keep you updated with that. They moved from the Pat Baca Library last year, and they're feeling that they need to go back. Also, Valley and Northeast have started going every other month, so Northeast didn't have a meeting this month, but they will have a meeting next month. So that's all I have to report. Any other questions?
Chris, what time is the May 4th meeting?
Starts at 8:30. 8:30 is the socializing hour.
AM? AM?
AM, yeah. And then the official meeting starts at 9.
And is it just Valley and Northeast that are meeting every other month?
So far.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody here from the APOA? Okay. And then Director Harness.
Good evening, Chair Galloway, honorable board. There was only one PPRB meeting this previous month from the last board meeting. Items considered were the aviation police criminal trespass notification, policy 3-16 seniority, policy 2-46 response to traffic crashes, and policy 1-86 report review. I voted to pass all of those along. I have reviewed the draft of IMR 9, and I have submitted my comments back to the monitor. The admin position for the board is at budgeting for fiscal impact analysis, which should be the last hurdle before it is posted. Excuse me, as Attorney Aguilar spoke, the budget process excuse me, has begun. We have received some inquiries from council services, and our responses are due back by April 19th. Those inquiries surround staffing, the expansion of staffing, the unfilled analyst position, and contemplation of ongoing contracts. The board requested to review I-3318. The chief has made accommodation to do that, so you will need to contact Internal Affairs, and you will be able to view the file at the Internal Affairs office. The CPOA quarterly report, oral report, will be given to City Council next Monday, April 15th. And that's it for me. I will stand for questions.
Anybody have any questions? Yes.
Have you had the opportunity to hire a contract investigator?
Chair Galloway, member St. John, I have received an RFP,
Okay.
and it's been returned because there were some investigators that I did not want to work on our cases, and so I have not received it back. They are anticipating that their capacity is 10 cases a month. They're also anticipating that it would be at an average cost of $2,500 per case.
Okay, thank you.
I-3318, I assume that's connected to our case 13218?
Chair Galloway, member Vandevender, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Will I use the same phone number to go review?
You need to
Will I be using the same phone number to make arrangements as I normally do?
Chair Galloway, member Vandevender, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
The agency that you're in contact with to review cases for us, do some of the offset some of that caseload, is that the only agency that's available to us?
Chair Galloway, of the 3 approved vendors for investigations by the city, this is the one that has the largest capacity. The other 2 simply have 1 or 2 investigators on their staff.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anybody else?
No, excuse me, I'd like for you to repeat the case number that's related to I-33-18.
I-3218?
I-3218.
132.
132, sorry.
What?
Yeah, 132.
I-3318 is related to 13218 CPC.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Moving right along, reports from subcommittees. Community outreach, since Joanne is not here this evening, and Director Harness, I'm going to ask for your help in recalling these dates, but she wanted to report on the annual report timeline and rollout. So this was going to be the 2018 and the expected dates for that.
Chair Galloway, I had a meeting with Dr. Guerin last Thursday. I have received a draft of the first half of 2018, but it needed to be reworked because it was not properly categorizing administratively closed cases. It wasn't taking into account that there is investigative processes that are along with those. I would anticipate that within the next couple of weeks, we should have actually both, because he did have a draft of the second half, and he took my critiques back and was reworking them.
Okay. So conceivably at the next board meeting, full board meeting, we'll have the complete draft to be able to take back and review at the committee level and move to approve?
Chair Galloway, I would anticipate that, yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Joanne was in contact, and maybe even your office was in contact with the Crimes Against Children's Unit that was supposed to report to us last month. They will be here in May. And then the collateral materials timeline. Did I see Amanda back there? Hi. Can you just give us an update on that? Or do you have, Director Harness, the timeline for where things stand with the collateral materials to go out?
Chair Galloway, we have set up the postage return, and we have that template. We also have gotten approval of the requisition for the graphics work for ABQ Graphics. And so we're anticipating having that product by the end of the month and begin a stocking process prior to the monitor's visit.
Wonderful. All right, that was all that she had. We, as a committee, did not elect a chairperson. So we're going to need to make sure that that's on the agenda. I don't know if Katrina or Amanda, who handles that, but Director Harness, if you could make sure that that's on the agenda for the Outreach Subcommittee's next meeting, so we can take care of that piece of business, I would appreciate it. Policy and Procedure Review Subcommittee, Chelsea.
Okay, yes, we met last Thursday. I believe it was April 4th. We discussed making a request for data to APD that we could analyze. This has been an ongoing process and project. We are going to make a formal request. I believe Board Member Cass is going to facilitate that with the CPOA. We reviewed the 2016 and 2017 use of force report with Dr. Winograd, Commander Middleton, and there were two other people in attendance. Can you help me with their names, Member Cass?
One of them sitting in the audience.
Yes.
Natalie Davila and Sharon Press.
Natalie, say your last name one more time.
Davila.
Davilak? Davila, okay. And Sharon Press. We're all in attendance. We had a really interesting conversation about the report. They answered all of our questions that if anyone would like to review that, Mr. Arison did record it, and so you can view it on YouTube at your pleasure. We had a discussion of the unfilled data analyst position for the CPOA and whether or not that was something the board might consider pursuing. I think that Board Member Cass volunteered to draft some sort of a scope of work that we may consider. We had, let's see, we elected a new chairperson. That chairperson is I. And that is the sum of things. Our next meeting will be the first Thursday before the next full POB meeting. And let me pull that up on my calendar so I can give you the date. So that will be held on May 2nd at 12:30, and it will be at the usual time and location at 12:30 p.m. in the Plaza del Sol building.
Thank you. Just since you've done that, I suppose I missed that on the outreach report. So the next outreach meeting is going to be on April 23rd at 1 p.m. Moving along to case review.
Okay, our case review meeting was on Tuesday, March 26th, 2019 at 11:30 a.m. The cases that we reviewed are on tonight's agenda, with the exception of case number 244-18 and 275-18. These two cases did not go through the case review committee, and according to Mr. Harness's email to us, the reason for this is because of timeline, because of the investigation timeline and the need to have them get to APD for the 30-day review period. And our next meeting is scheduled for, May the 2nd? Do you have a time on that? I mean, April the 23rd at 1:30? Thank you.
Okay, on to the Personnel Subcommittee. We met last month amid quite a bit of chaos. The long and short of it is that we are scrubbing the evaluation results that came in after the board approved to use the evaluation tool and go on ahead and start that evaluation process for Director Harness. We are going to scrub that, and this evening we're going to talk about it as a board. Who is the appropriate audience for receipt of that evaluation, who we should be including in that, so that there is no confusion among members of the board or staff who will be receiving that tool, and then we'll arrange to send that out again. We are working on a policy and a tool for receiving complaints and commendations for the executive director of the CPOA. And so at next month's board meeting, we'll have that for the board to approve as well. Okay, and we'll try and get that out to you for review ahead of time. Other than that, we are scheduled to meet again on April 26th at 9:30 in the Plaza del Sol basement hearing room. Also, we did not elect a chair, so I think that the only committee that elected a new chairperson or reappointed their chairperson was Policy and Procedures, so all of those next committee meetings need to have that. Director Harness, please. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Cass.
I think this is the opportune time to bring this up, but we created a so-called executive or coordinating committee at our February 2018 board meeting. It was unanimously approved by the board. The composition was specified, although that can be adjusted according to our own bylaws. But I would like to strongly recommend that we start that committee. It didn't get very far, but I believe it's still on our books. I think it's important to have that committee, and so I would advocate that we deal with it in a formal basis, either to remove the committee, which I think would not be a good action, but I think it'd be a better action to resurrect that committee and have it perform like it was intended originally.
I agree. It's something that I would like to see happen as well. However, with the board remaining at 6 members currently, it's not something that we can do, and coupling that with the new ordinance that's gone through. So I think as soon as we have a full complement of the board, then we can address that committee again. But I'm in agreement with you. We should have that reinstated.
Yeah, I'm also in agreement, and I don't know if we're really on time restraints because the individuals that go are the chairs, and each of our committee, has a chair. But wait till after May, because there might be some changes.
Or their appointees. The problem with doing it now is that the new ordinance that was passed, I believe, and maybe Mr. Moya can enlighten us, I would imagine he has the behind-the-scenes details, says that board members cannot serve on more than 2 committees.
Oh, okay.
Which would preclude, I think, most of us from joining a third kind of executive-type committee.
Okay.
Did that piece of information, did that piece of the ordinance get passed with it?
Chairwoman Galloway, board members, I can't quite recall. There were so many amendments. I'd have to go back and look and see just to make sure. I don't want to give you guys the wrong information.
I appreciate that. I think that that's
Okay,
how I
understand.
understood that to go,
Okay.
so, which will also lead to a discussion a little later on about Member Fine and myself resigning from a committee,
Okay.
so, okay. Moving on, if there's nothing else under the subcommittee reports, we're going to move over to the discussion ordinance update. Director Harness, do you want to lead that, or no? Big eyes.
Chair Galloway, the ordinance passed. I really don't have anything to add. I think most of us were there for the final debate for the add-in amendments. The subpoena power that was added, it was amended a bit from what our recommendation was. The percentage of the budget was eliminated to use language that simply says that we will be properly funded for our mission. The raw data aspects were included. I do believe that the subcommittee numbers were not changed, so I believe it did retain that 2 subcommittees limit. I wonder, Mr. Moya, do you have any idea of when it might be published and to go in?
Chairwoman Galloway, Director Harness, the kind of final enacted version should be on the Legistar website by the end of business tomorrow, and should be sent to the mayor for signature tomorrow as well.
The other thing is that we are going to continue meeting in this space for our board meetings. I know that there was a proposed amendment that we find another venue, but we're going to be remaining here. I think those were the highlights from the last round of, right? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. The budget for FY20, that's, I assume, this document in front of us?
Yes, Chair Galloway, as being proposed at this moment, it is still the percentage. Based upon that percentage, we are seeing a reduction of about $60,000 for our annual budget. So I have provided for you what those proposed numbers are. I will be requesting 4 additional investigators. There is a study. There's a study that proposes that for every 70 police officers, an oversight agency should have 1 investigator. The city of Oakland, they budget 1 investigator per 100 officers. So using those as sort of guidelines, we would need at least 4 investigators to come into the office. So I will be making that request within the budget. If the process follows as it has in past years, we will present those requests. They will go through the budgeting process, and then we will make our presentation. Chair Galloway and myself, we will make those presentations to Councilor Jones, who is the chair of the Committee of the Whole, and that will be in May.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
With the addition of 4 investigators, are you also looking at relocating?
Exactly my question.
Chair Galloway and Member Waits, we would require additional space, certainly. And I don't know that, I'm not sure whether or not we could be accommodated where we are now, or whether we would have to find another city location.
So are we paying rent to that building?
Chair Galloway, Member Waits, we are not.
Okay.
Do we anticipate needing to? And if so, like if you have to move spaces to accommodate additional staff, will the city be picking up the tab in the new space, or will we be doing that out of our budget, and is that number reflected in here?
Chair Galloway, that question isn't answered yet. I would imagine the first step would be to look for city accommodations. By ordinance, we cannot be in the police building, we cannot be in any substation, and we cannot be in the Bernalillo County Government Center. So aside from that, other city facilities we would have to examine to see if there was space available. If not, then we would have to look for other office space, and then we would have to make the appropriate adjustment in the budget.
Okay. Any other questions about the budget? Okay. Legal counsel contract.
Yes, Chair Galloway, this is on the agenda so that the board can decide whether or not they want to continue to use their current representation. And if so, then we would go about getting a new contract and a requisition set up for fiscal year 2020. You will see in the budget proposal there is the allocation for the $75,000, which has been the allocation for the last couple of years for the contracted legal services. This year we may go over that, and we're not sure whether or not we're going to have to do that by a new requisition to the City Council, or whether or not the mayor is going to lift the cap on contracts and move that number to 100,000. That's, I believe, on the mayor's desk to decide at this point. But more fundamentally, I believe that council has expressed a desire to continue to represent you, so the board needs to decide whether or not you want to continue with this representation.
I would make a motion that we renew the contract with current council.
I would second it.
What's the motion? I'm sorry.
That we renew our contract with current council.
So we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion that we'd like to take place? Okay,
All in favor?
then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, carries, what is that, 4-1? All right. Thank you, Ms. Gooch. We are pleased to keep you on board. ISR contract.
Yes, Chair Galloway, this is more informational at this point. Just as we have to requisition monies for the contract for legal counsel, it's my intention that we will do the same for ISR because we can't afford to have any lag between filling an analyst and having an analyst on staff and ending a contract. So it's my intention that we will retain ISR on a contract basis for them to do the data work and the work study that they're going to be doing for our investigators. So we're going to be continuing to move forward with them.
What are we currently contracting with ISR? I know that they're doing our annual report, and I know that they're kind of primed and ready for any other kind of data analysis for trends, if I remember correctly. Is there anything else that they're working on for us? Or those-
Chair Galloway, they're going to be doing a work study for our agency, for the investigators. That's the larger project. And if the policy or any of the board has any policy analysis that they want done, they're available to do that as well.
And how much is our contract for with them?
Chair Galloway, it was for $79,000, but that actually was a 14-month contract. We did that so we wouldn't have to come back right again at the beginning of the fiscal year last year. This contract is going to be for $60,000 for the year.
Okay. And nothing that we need to do right now, you're just letting us know?
Chair Galloway, that's correct.
Okay. Item E, chair selection for APD policy development committees. This is OPA and PPRB, correct?
Chair Galloway, that is correct.
Okay. We need to, I guess, just announce that the new chair of the Policy and Procedure Committee is going to be attending those meetings, and if for some reason she's unavailable to, she will designate somebody else from the committee to attend.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. All right.
Chair Galloway?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I think you actually have to have an appointment and you have to vote on it.
Okay. We do that at this level and not at the committee level? Correct. Okay. Then-
Well, I believe the policies and procedures and the ordinance designates that the chair will make those appointments.
Didn't I just do that? I mean, not to be, funny, but is that sufficient, Tina?
It would be good if you took a motion and if you made the motion, everyone voted in accord with that, and then you had that for your meeting minutes. But yes, you did just do that.
Okay, well then we'll do it that way, just to be safe. Then I will move that we appoint Member Vandeventer as the new chair of Policy and Procedure to attend the OPA and PPRB meetings.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, vote carries unanimously. All right, moving on to item 10, consent agenda cases.
Member St. John, there were a few of these cases where at the committee level, we discussed moving these forward on the consent agenda, but having, certain minor changes made. I believe it was Member Fine who suggested most of those changes.
Right.
Did you confirm that the
I
edits were
don't
made?
have any records of those. I don't have minutes from there. I haven't received them from Chair Fine.
Okay. Well, yeah, Director Harness, do you have an answer to that question? The question was, at the subcommittee level, at the case review subcommittee, I believe it was largely Member Fine who suggested changes to certain cases in here, but we also agreed to move them forward with the minor changes. Can you report back on whether those changes have occurred prior to their appearance here?
Chair Galloway, Member Vandeventer, I believe Chair Fine said that she made notes and she made changes on those documents, and those documents were not changed in SharePoint. We tried to contact Member Fine to find out what those were, and we did not get a response. I did review those with the investigator or the investigators for those cases, and I was comfortable with them moving forward as they are.
Okay. Well, this needs to go on to, Katrina, could you make a note of this, please, for our case review committee agenda? That we need to have some sort of mechanism by which we ensure that those things we vote on occur. Someone needs to do some sort of follow-up or something so that, you know, we're not just kind of like wasting our time over there, I guess.
So none of the changes that were discussed at the committee level were made to these documents, correct?
Chair Galloway, that's correct. I reviewed the concerns with the investigator in context with the complaint and found that the information in the findings letter was sufficient.
I guess I would ask then,
See, where I have a
since
problem
you're
is
the chair.
we voted for the change, and now he's telling me that a decision was made not to include those changes. So,
and it was an actual, because my understanding, and maybe you can help me with this, Ms. Gooch, is that the subcommittee level cannot take action. They can make recommendations to the board for action. Is that correct?
Chairperson Galloway, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
so let me follow up with that. So we can vote, we can say we will vote for this with these changes, and Director Harness can make the final decision because he, you know, not to do it. Is that what you're saying?
Chairperson Galloway and Board Member St. John, no. What I'm saying is that the subcommittees can decide that they want to bring something to the board for final action. And in this instance, I'm not privy to exactly what the vote was, so I can't speak with specifics. But if there was a change to the form or substance of whatever it may be that the subcommittee wants to recommend, that should be a recommendation presented to the board for the full board to vote upon. Once that action is taken on that issue, it should be implemented through the agency.
Okay.
Chair Galloway, the case review committee can only vote to move a case to the consent agenda or the non-consent agenda. The substance of the findings is for the full board to vote upon. And so that's what's being presented.
I'm sorry, I'm going to give you just 1 second, but yes.
No, I agree with Executive Director Harness. Was there anything in those cases specifically that we needed to have corrected that would change the outcome of them? Valerie? Yeah.
Can you? I don't recall.
So,
They were,
so I have a different understanding
Okay.
because the case review committee is not formalized through our policies and procedures. So nowhere then does it say that the case review committee is allowed to do this and allowed to do that. The case review committee only exists by virtue of our agreeing that it exists. And so, and I mean, also I think this, like whether or not something is on a consent agenda or not a consent agenda, this isn't formal. I mean, this is the way we do it, but this is not in our procedures either. You know, so I mean, I think for purposes of efficiency, what happened was, you know, there might have been 2 or 3 cases that mostly Member Fine, if I'm remembering correctly, thought that the outcomes were good, but maybe there should have been a language change here or there. One case had several grammatical errors. One case needed some more proofreading. These are, you know, kind of small quality control things that don't, it would take too much time to get those, I mean, maybe not, I mean, if you guys are willing to spend the time on those kind of finer points, then we can do so. But in my mind, it makes sense that the case review committee be allowed to authorize those small changes while sending the outcomes to the board without changes. And so that's what we were seeking to do, and that is what we always do, actually. But from what I understand, no one ever follows up on it. You know, we always say, okay, we approved this case, but, you know, please fix that small thing. And I don't understand that anyone ever ensures that it ever gets fixed at any point. And so I wanted to make sure that we asked, and it sounds like it doesn't, and so.
Well, I'll be honest here, I thought that when we went over and we voted to put it on the consent agenda with the changes, I didn't know until tonight that it's not done, because we never see the final letter. So I think.
I think it is up to us to ensure that it gets done.
So we need to.
Before we get to tonight, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Gooch, I see you flipping pages.
Chair Galloway, so to be clear, it's not a formal change to either the manner in which the letters are done, it's more typographical errors and input regarding verbiage that's coming up, as opposed to a across-the-board issue for board consideration?
Yes, when we have an actual issue or we don't agree on findings or facts, then those are the cases we typically put on the non-consent agenda. But we'll oftentimes put cases on the consent agenda where we agree with the outcomes as presented and the facts as found by the CPOA. But we might think that there are errors that should be corrected before it goes out, or maybe small changes in language. And so those, we usually ask the CPOA to make those changes, but recommend that they still be placed on the consent agenda with the understanding that the CPOA agrees to make those small changes. And I think that there isn't anything about doing it that way that violates our rules and procedures. And I think that's how we want to do it, or else we just really slow the wheels down unnecessarily for things that don't deserve everyone's full attention. But
Okay, so the committee is in agreement that the cases that are listed on the administratively closed and the exonerated A and B under the consent agenda should be there.
Yes.
Okay. So that in and of itself is not the issue. You just would like to see the changes that were requested, the typographical and grammatical, those changes made before these get sent out to the public.
Yes, that's true. And like I said, I was surprised because until Director Harnish just stated, I didn't know it wasn't being done. I thought his office was doing that. I didn't think.
Chair Galloway, Member St. John, certainly we have made minor changes to letters. And in this instance, as I recall, there was a request to define a uniform color, which simply the fact that it was not an APD officer, I think, is sufficient in the findings letter that's going to the complainant. In another instance, there was, the investigation could find no other information, I think is a succinct enough sentence as opposed to saying we couldn't find a CAD, we couldn't find a police report. So in the context of the complaint and in the context of the letter, I feel that those are sufficient. Those letters are available to every board member prior to coming to this meeting so that they can vote on them, because the board has to make the full vote.
Right.
And I did make the effort of reviewing the complaint, talking to the investigator, and going through the letter again. That's my assessment of the investigation, and that's what's in front of you today.
So Director Harness, so what you're telling me is the final letter with or without the changes are in SharePoint. So before tonight, I can go back and see if the correction was made do I have to go back and verify it? What do you recommend? I really don't want to have to drive down to your office.
Chair Galloway, Member St. John, those letters are on SharePoint for, until we remove them after this meeting. Now, edits in SharePoint may not be reflected because the letters that go out do not go out of SharePoint, they would go out of our X drive. So, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so the question is not whether or not we want to approve the cases on the consent agenda. It's just, maybe, it sounds like maybe just follow-up communication. If, I don't know, this is your all's committee, but I would assume that if a request is made for small changes, detail changes, saying, hey, we looked at these cases, we went on ahead and made these changes, we didn't make this. I mean, is that simple enough? Just a real quick email back to the committee so that we're not having this conversation at the board. Can that be done?
Certainly, Chair Galloway.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so then do we need to have a motion to approve the cases on the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to accept the administratively closed cases 089-18, 010-19, 018-19, 041-19, 176-18, 013-19, 026-19, 064-19, 261-18, 014-19, 036-19, 070-19, 277-18, 016-19, 037-19, 007-19, 017-19, 038-19.
And
Oh, okay, excuse me. And 226-18.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a comment before we go. If we're not changing the content, the body of the complaint, and if it's just typographical errors, we shouldn't make an issue out of this. It's not that bad, okay? I understand follow-up. I understand you need to make sure that corrections are done. But at this level where we're at today, if we're not changing the actual body of it, or if we're not asking for more information so we can make a decision, then it's not necessary. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have the non-consent agenda, administratively closed case 186-16. I make a motion to accept the findings.
So this case appears, this was a case where the board members,
Yeah, I'll second.
okay, this is the case that went to the Garrity vote. And so it appears on the closed session so that we can have a discussion about the case. And I think that we should not take a vote until we have that discussion in closed session.
Okay, so we need to dispense with that current motion and second.
Okay, so I make a motion to withdraw my motion until further discussion.
I think we need to finish out that first one, right?
Oh, we need to, oh, sorry.
So it would be a failed vote is what we're looking for here, correct? So, thank you both. So let's go on ahead and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Okay, so that particular motion fails to carry. Ms.
Okay,
St. John,
thank
would you
you.
like to make another one?
Chair Galloway,
Yes, Director Harness.
The findings in the case are actually unfounded and not sustained, not administratively closed.
Right. Oh. Okay. That failed to carry those, so we're going to go on ahead and,
Just,
it's the non-consent agenda,
Correct.
unfounded, not sustained.
right.
Thank you for that clarification. Then I guess I would move that we hold on voting on this particular case until after our closed session.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, next we have exonerated and founded case number 244-18. Do we have a motion to accept the findings?
I move we accept the findings.
I second.
Any discussion?
I'm trying to recall which one is which. 4-4 is,
Here, oh, yeah.
oh, yeah, okay. Thank you. I
Okay.
don't have anything to say.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next we have sustained case 275-18. Motion to accept.
I would make a motion that we approve the findings of the CPOA in 275-18.
Okay,
A second.
a second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Can I just ask a question about administratively closed cases versus exonerated cases? So in some of them, it seems like it would be, just reading through, that it would be fairly easy to just exonerate or say that it was unfounded or whatever the case may be, rather than administratively closing the case. So how does that process work? What is the determining factor or factors? Can you give me an example?
Chair Galloway, as is highlighted in IMR 8 and now IMR 9, the standard that is being allowed under administratively closed cases is minimally substantiate what is on the face of the complaint. So if we cannot minimally substantiate what is on the face of the complaint, we administratively close it. If we're going to reach an exonerated or an unfounded, then we must do a completed investigation, which would require calling in the officer for interviews and taking those full and other longer investigative steps. So that's the determination.
Okay, so for example, there was a case that we had last month. We had some discussion around where it seems like the only piece that was missing, because your complainant didn't want to cooperate, didn't want to answer any questions from your investigator, would have been simply to call the officer and ask them the questions. I don't know if you can just call them or if you have to bring them in, but even if you did, having the officer be asked simply, did this event take place, would have, I think, if I understand correctly, allowed for that to be unfounded or exonerated, and it was just that one additional step. In an administratively closed case, it leaves it open to the complainant, if I'm not mistaken, to, if new information becomes available or whatever, to refile that complaint, and leaves the officer kind of in that limbo as to where if I think if it's exonerated, if the case is closed out, then the officer is done with this. Is that correct?
Chair Galloway, in part, in the case that you are speaking about last month, we did not have a complainant who came forward. And so we administratively closed it, even though we did have other information. The other aspect of this is that if it's an administratively closed case and there's no targeting of an officer, then it does not provide a hit on their EIS system. Aside from that, administratively closed cases give the ability of the complainant a broader spectrum by which they can reopen a case. If it was to be a case with an exonerated or an unfounded, then the appeal process is much more constricted. So if the complainant were to come forward and say, I'm ready to talk, then we could reopen that case. If we had gone through that step and we had only the one side, then that complainant would have to go through the appeal process, which is much more constricted.
If I remember correctly, that you guys had attempted to make contact with that complainant several times, and they were not interested in participating, were not returning phone calls or mailings, if I remember correctly. I don't know. I just wonder if it wouldn't be better for officers in that case if it's expected not to go anywhere, if you've done your best as far as your investigators and yourself in trying to complete this, to close that out for the officer. Is
Chair
that-
Galloway, the officer is not targeted in an administratively closed case, so therefore there is no there's no negative record for having a complaint. So it's not a matter of it being better for the officer from any sort of standpoint. They're not targeted, so they're not.
Doesn't affect them.
It doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
Before we move on completely, I probably already dispensed with 275-18, but I think I would like to bring up the issue of, I think there were some policy issues that were raised in this, I think, in the investigation, and I think they're separate from the recommendations that were made by the CPOA. And I'd like to see us address those policy issues. And I'm not sure what the forum for doing that is, but I believe they should be raised at some level with the CPOA so that we can, I mean, there were two policies in particular that were cited, the SOP 320, which was the overtime compensation, and SOP 101-01, which is the personnel code. And this is it's a very serious sort of policy, has a lot of policy impact, I think, and it can affect a lot of APD, but I believe the investigation did identify that there were deficiencies in parts of the process, or maybe at various steps in the process of policy development and implementation. And so I would like to bring that to the attention of the board so that we can follow up on these policy issues.
Chair Galloway, member Dr. Cass, I believe it probably would be appropriate for 275-18 to be on the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee's agenda for its next meeting so that the subcommittee can suss out exactly what, suss out the concerns that are already expressed within that investigation, and then possibly draft whatever recommendation they want to bring to the full board.
Thank you.
Can I say something about that too?
Yes.
I was really pleased with this investigation. I thought it was really good. I thought it identified so many different areas of policy that can be, to which we could make near immediate changes and have see a large impact. And there were also a lot of layers, and so I have made a note to bring this to our next policy subcommittee meeting already. But I'm wondering, I do think that we're going to need to work collaboratively with the CPOA, because some of these policies I think are going to go, or some of the issues this raised go beyond probably the scope of what I understand our policy work to be on this board. Like one of the first things that came up was the conflict between the Fair Labor Standards Act and the contract with APD and the city of Albuquerque. And so the city of Albuquerque allows officers to consider, if I'm understanding this correctly, I'm working from memory, the contract allows officers to consider time they took on vacation, time worked, whereas the Fair Labor Standards Act does not allow that. And so we Mr. Scotch DePole makes a recommendation properly in there that needs to be re-bargained, but I think it actually goes a little bit beyond that, because I think that legally you cannot bargain that away. You cannot bargain yourself out of federal law. And so it's actually sort of a bigger problem, or I don't mean to say a bigger problem. The problem is what the problem is, but it's a little bit like beyond the pay grade of the Police Oversight Board, having a conversation about the legality of certain clauses of the police contract between APD and the city of Albuquerque. And so some of those recommendations, I think, will need to, and we can certainly discuss them and maybe guide them, but I would like to do that in concert with the CPOA, especially because they did such a fantastic investigation. And I think that we might need to be sending, having a conversation maybe with city legal, or, something that's different from our usual identify an issue, research that issue, and send a letter to the chief is the usual avenue. And so some of this stuff is not going to be like the usual type of policy work that we do. And so I have, like I said, already made a note for our policy meeting, and so I'm happy to pursue it there and explore it further there, and I would like to work collaboratively with the CPOA on that stuff, because some of it just goes beyond what we are capable of doing on our own. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cass and Member Van Deventer. Alrighty, moving on. There's no serious use of force or officer-involved shooting cases. We don't have anything on our agenda to approve for Garrity material review. So I would entertain a motion to, a roll call vote to go into closed session.
I make a
Yes, go ahead.
I make a motion that we go into closed session.
I second the motion.
Okay,
Aye.
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 Wonderful, we are in closed session. Thank you. Thank you.